Thank you. Good afternoon. I prepared a very short PowerPoint presentation on this topic. Roughly speaking, I would like to tell the story of the transformation of religious Italian landscape, and moving from this short description of the transformation, I would like to show the contradiction concerning particularly the freedom of religion and the many attempts to limit the freedom of religion in our country. The source of the data I try to show you very shortly is the results of a national survey on place of worship led in 2009-2012 by a team of researchers from University of Padova, Turin, Bologna, Rome, and Palermo, granted by the Ministry of University. The main question, the first question, whether and to what extent the social system, Italian social system, legal, political, and cultural, has so far been able to fully guarantee religious freedom and worship, facing the transformation of the Italian religious landscape from the monopoly to religious diversity. Second question, there are two signs on which we want to draw your attention. I would like to comment one regional law that introduced reasonable discrimination. It's a precise quotation by a professor of public law of the University of Padova, who was the advisor of the president of the Regione Veneto. He was the author of this text. And second, the negotiation at national level to limit the use of religious symbols deemed dangerous. According to the sociological literature, as a rule, we try to distinguish the concept of religious diversity from religious pluralism, because religious diversity is a sort of practical tool to describe a social transformation. Pluralism concerns more precisely to policies, to politics of religious identity when in a country you have a religion of majority, like Italy with the Catholicism. Just to give you some element to describe the transformation. Of course, pay attention, all these figures are the outcome of estimation, inference, statistical inference. We haven't any empirical survey, national survey, that is able to taste actually the consistency of this figure. We have, according to the last dossier statistico immigrazione by Confronti IDOS 2017, we have more than 5 million of migrants in Italy. It means 8.3% of the total population, of Italian population. And you can see, I don't read, but you can see from the red, from your left to your right, the most important presence, according to this inference, are represented by Christians. Second group are Muslims, third Buddhism, and Sikh and Hindu. The most important, Oriental migrants came from Punjab, and we estimate that probably the majority of this population are Sikh, but we don't have precise information to confirm that. This is the progression in the longitudinal term of the different presence, Catholic, migrant, Orthodox, and Muslim. You can see the last report by Dossier Statistico Immigrazione moved from 1.5 million by Orthodox, 1,600,000 by Muslims. This is the synthetic outlook of the population. Now I would like to show that among the Catholic or Christian, among the Christian migrants, the distribution of according to various religious belonging, you can see the majority of the Christians belong to various Orthodox churches, national churches. There are a consistent group of Catholics coming from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Asia means China, particularly China. We haven't any available empirical research to verify this figure, but it's important to remind that we have a small group of Chinese which belong to evangelical, Pentecostal, so-called domestic churches coming from Wenzhou or other place where in China now there's a effervescence, religious effervescence of the Christianism. All these figures, are a bias based on a simple inference, establishing a relationship between geographical origin of immigrants and their religious affiliation. Insofar, we have to be very careful with these figures. Actually, the inference does not tell us much about the religious differentiation within a religion in the country of origin, or in particular, the actual degree of belief and practice of people. In other words, there's a diversity of the religious diversity. In absence of a national survey in Italy on the various denominations, the attempt we made was firstly to map the place of worship. And now, very quickly, this is the map of Muslim worship places. Pay attention. Mosque, I don't use the word mosque because actually in Italy we have up to now 6 mosques in architectural terms. Otherwise, we have many small, medium, small size place of worship, more or less according to last figure of the Ministry of Interior, the sum of this worship place reached 800 places in Italy. This is the map of the Sikh temple, Gurudwara, more or less 40 temples in Italy. But the difference, in this sense, that this map is useful because you can see Islam is spreading in national territory. It's a national religion. Meanwhile, Sikh Gurudwara temple is concentrated in some region according to the labor market, according to the professional skill of this worker. This is the diffusion of the Pentecostal church from Nigeria and Ghana. This is the diffusion of Orthodox parishes. In 2000 in Italy we had less than 100 parishes. In 70 years, the increase of number reached the total of 355. 70% of this parish was open since 2000. Okay, in this sense, Catholic Church in our country, in Italy, is playing an important role, coping with this transformation of the social environment. On the other hand, try to preserve the cultural hegemony, the cultural centrality that the Catholic Church had over the century in Italy. And you have in this representation the different strategy of dialogue, very friendly with Catholic, with Orthodox churches, confrontation with Pentecostalism, dialogue, but carefully dialogue with Buddhism, Sikh, and Muslim. I can go to, in this sense, the Catholic monopoly is still supported by a peculiar normative regime. The colleague this morning illustrated this peculiarity of the concordate rules, which gives for historical reason and long-term policy to detect a peculiar position of the Catholic Church over other religious minority. Other religious minority have to apply another regime, the regime of intese, agreement. Or other religions are considered up to now from a legal point of view as well as minorities because they should apply for the recognition by the state. But increasing religious diversity within Italian society presents a challenge, of course, to the Catholic monopoly. But actually, Catholic monopoly still shows its ability to preserve the function of central supplier of salvation goods, thanks to the legal system that recognizes its role and mentor of identity and collective memory of Italian, as well as dispenser of many social services, from welfare to education and so on. Some religions, particularly Islam, until now, Jehovah's Witnesses and Buddhist and Hindu Federation, New Hindu Federation, are waiting for a legal recognition. Meanwhile, other minorities have achieved legal status in recent years, like Seventh-day Adventist Church of Assembly of God, or most important Protestant presence in Italy. But I would like to focus on these two cases. The first, look at the Article 31 bis of the Veneto regional law on worship places. According to this article, region and municipality establish the criteria for construction of churches, temples, and prayer centers. Article there also establishes that before granting the possibility of building new place of worship, it is necessary to identify suitable areas, interregulatory plans, ensuring access roads, urbanization, parking, and so on. It's classical administration rules. As long as there are no such precise references, the new churches and mosques will have to be built outside the inhabited centers, in areas for service, shopping center, gyms, and so on. In any case, it will be possible to hold a citizen referendum to decide whether it is possible to build a mosque in the city. From not only from legal point of view, but from socio-cultural point of view, of course, for me, it's a very intriguing discrimination, no? To give the possibility to hold a citizen referendum. Okay, in Switzerland we had this very curious referendum in 2009 by which the majority of Swiss people agree with the idea that to ban the minarets, not mosques, to minarets. Okay, but now I would like to stress when there was a debate about this article in the media and so on among scholars and specialists, experts and so on, and one of the motivation that the president of a region and other expert of a region said, of course, they said it's a reasonable discrimination. In other words, they were so honest intellectually to say it's discrimination, reasonable, but discrimination in any case. Second part of this law, in a transitional rule, they reiterate in this law that the new rule do not apply to all those buildings that already possess the requirement of intended use for places of worship. It means Catholic Church or Protestant Church, synagogue, patronage, oratories, parish sport field, thousand clergy of rabbi are another treatment, are not submitted to the same rule. The major must issue an ordinance for the closure of those places used for private space that do not have this intended use. What does it mean? If you remember the map I show concerning the diffusion of the prayer center of Muslims, the majority of this prayer center are not in accordance with this rule. All this space are destined for cultural activity, not religious worship. In this sense, it's very simple in Veneto, but perhaps like in Lombardia, other region, to close all these places, provoking, of course, conflict, protest, and so on. Last part of my, how to say, reflection, the question of Sikirpan or Sikirpan affair. In May 2017, the Supreme Court reminded that according to Italian law, it is forbidden to bring weapons into the public without justifying reason. It means only in cases where the possibility of carrying a weapon is necessary and functional to the objective needs related to the profession or to a specific work activity, like a gardener who has to prune a flower bed, or a surgeon carrying a scalpel in the context of a visit, and so on. Therefore, religious reasons given by a Sikh to bring the kirpan are not admissible, and therefore, those who do it commit crime. But in the motivation, the justification of the sentence, the judges declare that the public security is a common good that does not allow exception, and that a multi-ethnic society cannot become a sum of conflicting cultural archipelagos. I'm quoting precisely the sentence. The sentence refers to a juridical principle and of a social logic, the social cohesion, of course, widely shared in principle. However, it does not solve the problem of balancing the primacy of the common good and the respect for religious freedom. While the court pronounced itself before the Special Committee for the relationship with the new religious minority of the Ministry of Interior, there was a negotiation between the ministry and the representative of Sikh community in order to rule the question of the Kirpan affair. And the point of compromise reached by Ministry Commission for Relation with the Sikhs in view of possible agreement with their community was the following. A Sikh can wear kirpan, but the weapon must be rendered harmless, with a blade that in fact is not able to hurt, or with the handles of the blade welded with its sheath, or so that it cannot be extracted. It's Italian compromise, Italia's method to solve this kind of conflict. And the hypothesis of the reduction of the kirpan to harmless symbol was accepted by the Sikh representative. Even the rule by the court is likely to put everything in question. To sum up, I tried to create a sort of dossier of this juridical case, moving from this juridical case to interpretation, sociological interpretation of the, how to say, the stress of legal, political, cultural, and religious system in Italy to accept the religious diversity, overcome this dualist approach, concordate e intese regime, and on the other hand, to have an actual pluralistic politics, a politics of religious pluralism, according to a title created by Paolo Naso with Brunetto Salvarani in a book Italian case is a sort of work in progress. It's a laboratory where we are, how to say, we taste the difficulty from cultural point of view, political point of view, and religious point of view to move from religious diversity to religious pluralism. Thank you.